And at number 10, probability manipulation. Let's begin with the basics. Domino is a mutant who has an ability called probability manipulation. This allows her to subliminally and psionically initiate random kinetic phenomena that affect probability in her favor by making improbable things occur within her line of sight. This is also often referred to her as having good luck, and causing her opponents to have bad luck. It's worth noting that this ability is only capable of letting highly improbable things to occur, not impossible things, so the probability is always grounded somewhat in reality, despite however absurd the events that occur are. Now this could range between a foe's equipment failing for them or causing an overloading nuclear reactor to shut down based on a stray shot of her weapon. And we still don't know the full extent of what her powers can do. Up next, number 9, she's a living weapon. While Domino is a mutant, it's uncertain as to whether she always had the X gene or it was something that was altered with her body when she was a child. Domino was actually born in a secret government breeding program called Perfect Weapon, which sought to breed and then train living weapons, herself included. The experiment went a little haywire and Domino was assumed to have been the only one who survived. Now this is where her pale skin and the tattoo over her eye comes in the comics. That's where she got it from. Moving on to number 8, enhanced agility and reflexes. When you hear enhanced agility and reflexes, you're probably thinking it's a bit of a cop-out number. Most superheroes have that under their roster of skills. But Domino's agility and reflexes have a little extra something something. As a byproduct of her probability skills, her cerebral cortex actually emits a current of bioelectric pulses down her spine. These pulses instinctively guide her movements when she's in danger or in combat, and with her additional training of her natural reflexes and agility, this has augmented those skills to near superhuman levels. Moving on to number 7, she's a master markswoman. Domino knows her way around a firearm. Nina is skilled with various kinds of guns and explosives. She's got effortless accuracy and is extremely skilled when it comes to hitting targets or foes. Now after she escaped the Perfect Weapon program, smuggled out by her biological mother, Nina was left with a priest in a church who would eventually raise her. Now despite the time she spent there, all of the training and the experimentation from the Perfect Weapon program was just too dominant in her, so she left and became a mercenary. And a damn good one at that, putting all of her combat skills to use. And in addition to that, her probability manipulation lets her make impossible shots, hitting her targets when normally the chances of her making certain risky shots would be very, very low. Up next at 6, leadership skills. Domino has some serious leader chops, my friends. Aside from being a pretty good team player, she's been a member of the X-Force for God knows how long, Domino has also led her own teams. She took over leadership of Deadpool's Mercs for Money group, which was a mercenary group that attempted to use Deadpool's fame to make a ton of profit. Wade was pretty terrible at managing the group, so Domino stepped up and took over, and also shut Wade out. She also led an X-Corporation when Charles Xavier put her in charge of one of the branches that was dedicated to improving the welfare of mutants' lives. Unfortunately, this ended badly for Domino when her partner Risk was murdered. Moving on to number 5, she's an expert in martial arts. Okay, bit of an obvious number here, but one that is quite true. Domino's a pretty impressive athlete. Nina has been trained extensively in various martial arts and combines her skills with firearms in combat with these techniques in order to pack an effective punch. Or shot, rather. Or both. She's highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, and she's also an excellent swimmer, and has been considered an Olympic gold level athlete. Now speaking of obvious numbers, let's move on to another one that should be a given. In at 4, she is a master assassin. Much of Domino's time on X-Force was all about flexing one of her best skills, being an assassin. Sure, she is a great mercenary, but with her probability-based mutation and all of her training, being an assassin kinda comes naturally to her. She's also been in situations where she's had to kill before, like the time she needed to protect her brother Lazarus from their birth mother, who attempted to murder him after losing her sanity. In at 3, galanophobia. Okay, so yes, this is a weakness rather than a superpower, but let's get real for a sec, friends. We have 10 numbers to fill, and our girl really only has 9 points to talk about. Also, this is a very surprising fact unless you've read Volume 3 of Deadpool. You know, you probably wouldn't know this. Domino has something called galanophobia. What's that? It's a fear of chickens. Roosters. Anything that clucks and walks with 2 legs and potentially lays eggs. When Domino is working alongside Wolverine in issue 18 of that series that we just mentioned, they're crawling through an air vent when Domino is frozen in fear of a chicken that also happens to be in the air vent. It's a pretty hilarious moment. And when Deadpool asks her about this fear, she won't tell him why, and instead throws him out of a window. Moving on to number 2, she's lucky with death. Domino's probability manipulation, or good luck rather, doesn't just extend to the environment and individuals around her. It also keeps her alive. There's been multiple instances in the comics where we've seen her outlive a situation in which normally she would probably be dead. For example, Nina, whose last name is Thurman, was actually married to a dude named Milo Thurman. It was a brief marriage, with her having been hired to protect the scientist early on in her career. The two fell in love, got hitched, but then separated when Milo thought she had been killed. But surprise surprise, not the case. And in the recent Deadpool 2 film, in which Domino was portrayed by Zazie Beetz, the character is the only one aside from Deadpool to survive a parachute jump in which all other members of the X-Force were killed. Good luck does come in handy. And finally, in at number 1, unconscious ability. Domino's mutant abilities are ones that she does not have control over, like zero control, or maybe like 1% control, but we'll get to that in a sec. Her good luck is a subconscious ability, psionically initiating random telekinetic acts that she has no actual power over. It just happens. For the most part, it's triggered when she is in a stressful situation, with the effect of this power constantly emanating from her body. That being said, she needs to be engaged in a situation in which that power will be triggered. In order for her luck to take effect, she needs to be participating in an action in which she can affect the chance of the situation. There has been one situation though in which she was able to consciously use her powers, not 1%, affecting the probability fields of storm clouds above a group of ONE sentinels, with lightning striking them down. She's been working hard at practicing having cognitive control over her abilities for years now. In recent times, Domino actually has been struggling a bit with her powers coming in and out during the recent X-Force series, so here's hoping she gets a better grasp on it.
Number 10. Cloaking. Jean's powerful telepathic abilities allow her to sense almost any entity that could be in her vicinity. She's even been able to sense a watcher before, although I don't think she knew quite what it was, cause, you know, she couldn't see it. She can also use her telepathic senses to hide herself or others from being seen or found, both physically and visually. Using telepathy, she could make you appear invisible to others when you weren't. She could even change your appearance in somebody else's mind. In fact, her level of power means she could use this power to cloak multiple people and herself all at once if she so chose. Number 9. Flight. Sometimes people forget just how skilled of a telekinetic Jean really is, likely because we were too busy having our minds blown by her powers, capacities, and the Phoenix and her just telepathic achievements. And yet, while her telekinesis skills might not seem as great when compared with her telepathy, they are still pretty awesome. Even before she became superpowered by the Phoenix Force, Jean could utilize her telekinetic skills to make herself fly. Though admittedly as the Phoenix, she can not only fly, but can additionally fly faster than the speed of light. And also as the Phoenix, she did seem to forget sometimes that she could have even flown before, which is kinda weird. She's like, oh my gosh, I can fly, and I was like, you could fly before, girl, what you freaking out about? Calm down. So while not as fancy as some of her other powers, even this one gets a pretty insane upgrade from her merging with the Phoenix Force. Number 8. Pyrokinesis. It's understandable that with Jean comes fire. After all, her comic book foil is Emma Frost, who, while also a telepath, ends up often being associated with cold and ice, sporting her blue lipstick. If she is cold, Jean is fiery hot. This idea of Jean and fire transcends symbolism when it comes to her abilities to conjure fire through her connection to the Phoenix Force. The Force itself allows those it merges with to conjure a cosmic raging fire almost anywhere, including underwater and even in the vacuum of space. It's also really weird that Emma Frost and Jean Grey are actually referred to as like fire and ice and that type of stuff when they don't have any elemental abilities naturally. Weird, they're both just telepaths, but it's fine. Number 7. Psychic siphoning. One of Jean's abilities allows her to siphon psychic energy and use it to power herself. We see young future Jean do so in the comic Generations Jean Grey / Phoenix, when she and the Phoenix version of Jean are taking on Galactus. As Galactus tries to feed on the Phoenix's energy force, young Jean uses psychic energy from all around her, even siphoning energy from Galactus himself, to power herself up in order to deliver a powerful punch right to Galactus' face, successfully knocking him down as a result. As the Phoenix, we have seen this power in Jean evolve, allowing her to absorb the energy of entire stars, like when she ended the Debari race and their planet during her time as Dark Phoenix. Okay, so I know that wasn't really Jean because retcons, but I'm still counting it because it's just so iconic. So let me have it, guys, let me have it. There are some retcons that are best ignored, and I feel like that's probably not one of them actually, but I feel like it's such a good moment you should ignore part of it at least. Number 6. Molecular matter transmutation. Jean has the ability to transmute matter on a subatomic level. What does this mean? It means, well, that she could kill you in an instant, simply dissipating all your molecules. Ugh. Sounds painful. Or she could transform gold bars into a crown, and swords into a throne. Cause you know, if Jean were a character in Game of Thrones, she could just make her own throne and just demand everybody's surrender. Cause she's just that OP and that much of a queen. Am I right? All hail the Black Queen? Shouldn't be glorifying the fact that the Hellfire tortured her. Hellfire Club is bad. Number 5. Illusion creation. Mastermind may have used his illusionary powers to control Jean and transform her into the Hellfire Club's Black Queen, but when it comes to illusions, Jean herself also has some tricks up her sleeve. Or up her mind. She is able to create illusions by using telepathy. She can use her telepathy to affect the way you see her in your mind's eye, or to affect simply what you see or think you are experiencing just in general. Her telepathic and illusionary powers are so strong, she once even successfully used them into manipulating Magneto into thinking that he had killed Dazzler when he hadn't. Oh, and he also appeared to be wearing his helmet while this all went down, so that's pretty crazy. Number 4. Telekinetic weapons. During our self-titled series Jean Grey, we see Jean use her telekinesis skills in a way that she hadn't previously. With a little bit of guidance from Psylocke, she has now figured out how to construct her own psionic weapons. So cool! The thing that makes this interesting for Jean is that she doesn't really have the fighting know-how of her fellow mutant Psylocke, so she often has to get a little creative when it comes to which weapons she wants to choose to create. However, we later see her skill with psionic weapon creation develop, as although she isn't a fighter, as a skilled telekinetic, she can create any psionic construct that she chooses, using any weapons she makes to inflict physical or mental damage, or she can even do both with them. What? Yeah, psionic weapons. They're cool. Not just Psylocke can use psionic weapons. Surprise, surprise. Number 3. Raised dead. To many, Jean has at this point become immortal in the comics, / impossible to kill, due to her many resurrections. But while many comic book characters find it hard to stay dead, Jean herself has actually become unique even when it comes to this commonplace comic trope. The Phoenix Force has chosen to resurrect her before and saved her life more than once, it's true. But she has also on occasion managed to force the Phoenix Force to resurrect her by herself. Beyond that, she has also been resurrected without its help. What powerful force has made this come to pass other than the Phoenix Force? Why, Jean Grey herself, of course! That's right, after poison killed her and then again during End Song, she brought herself back to life. Just alone. She didn't even need the Phoenix Force. Crazy. Number 2. Concussive energy blasts. Similarly to her longtime lover Scott Summers, but slightly differently, Jean can use her telekinesis to create a concussive energy blast. These can be used to cause great damage to her enemies or her surroundings. While she has also used this power in the comics, you can see Jean use this power in film adaptations too, like in The Dark Phoenix when she loses control and causes some pretty big messes with it, and honestly kinda overuses it a little bit. I think we can all agree. A little bit. You have telekinesis, I get it. Number 1. Empathy. You might have thought the list of empaths in the world of Marvel was, well, a relatively short one. And while I would agree with you somewhat, I would also remind you that empaths have a tendency to show up in places that you initially just forgot to look. Jean is truly a character who distracts us with her destructive and mind-bending powers, and as such it can be easy to forget her more nuanced skills. Among them is her ability to use her telepathy as an empath. Not only can she sense what you are thinking and feeling, but she can also change and affect it too. Similar to the MCU's version of Mantis, but more terrifying, as Jean could likely easily use this power on a global scale, just like that. You know what I mean? Not like an Infinity Gauntlet, just FYI. Not every time we snap we're talking about that. In X-Men Red, issue number 11, we see Jean use her empathic powers to change her enemy's allegiance, turning them from villain to ally by imbuing them with the feeling of empathy. And not just in the moment either, but the long term, creating in them a long-term everlasting change to the way they feel and think in certain situations within their psyche. Pretty crazy. She's like rewriting people. She's like, now you feel this way about these things. No problem. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you found this list informative and that you aren't too scared of Jean Grey's awesome powers. She really does try to keep good control of them, but also you definitely would not want to cause her to lose control or give her a reason to, cause you harm, because she could definitely do that.
Luke Cage has been around a very long time, and he has continued to become more popular as the years have passed. He has had multiple comic series and even appeared in multiple television shows, one of them being his very own. Even though he's popular, that doesn't mean you know everything about him. I mean, maybe there's some powers that you didn't know about. And that, my friends, is what we're going to talk about today. Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I am your host, David Raft, and today, if you hadn't already guessed it, we are going to talk about the top 10 superpowers you never knew Luke Cage had. Now, of course, this list does not apply to everyone. I mean, a lot of you will know all of these already, but hopefully there will be something that at least surprises you. If not, I hope you just enjoy the video anyway. Now, with all that being said, let's dive in. Number 10, Super Strength. This one is definitely pretty well known, but hey, maybe some people didn't know, so that's why it's on the list. Luke Cage's Super Strength is one of his coolest powers. It's helped him in a lot of very difficult situations. Not only that, but it also makes him one of the stronger Marvel heroes. He has been able to take down so many villains, and I mean occasionally even other heroes with this power. And while yes, you may have heard of it, it needed to be mentioned because it's one of his most signature traits. Number 9, basically invulnerable. Yep, Luke Cage is basically invulnerable. I mean, there are certain things that can penetrate his skin, but not a lot. He can withstand bullets, knives, even some superpowered weapons. But he is susceptible to things like adamantium or certain magical weapons. In his TV show, there was even a special bullet called the Judas Bullet. It was made by Hammer Industries, using leftover Tritari metal from the Battle of New York. It explodes once it's inside its victim, which instantly kills normal humans, but Luke Cage was able to survive it, although it did really hurt him. Number 8, super healing. Luke Cage's super healing is one of the best in the Marvel Universe. He doesn't even need it since nothing can really technically hurt him, but whenever he gets into a fight with another hero, or hit with adamantium, or shot with the Judas Bullet, he is lucky to have this ability. It is able to heal him back to full health, as if nothing happened. It doesn't happen instantly, but way faster than that of an average human. Number 7, super jump. This ability is tied to his incredible strength and durability. Because he is both strong and durable, he is able to use his strength to push himself off the ground and leap great distances. And it doesn't hurt him because of his durability. He could jump up to certain buildings or is able to jump off very high points and land without even a scratch. All of those traits definitely come in handy for any superhero. And not even all superheroes don't even have that. So the fact that Luke Cage does makes life a little bit easier for him when he goes up. Makes life a little bit easier for him when he goes up to protect the city. Also, who would want to be able to jump great distances? I mean, that'd be awesome. Just jumping around the city. Man, a guy can dream. Number 6, amazing fighter. This one is not so much a power, but ability. So I just wanted to clarify that right now because it'll probably be mentioned in the comments. But back to my main point, Luke is an insanely skilled fighter. While he was growing up, he constantly taught himself how to fight. And later on, he trained with one of Marvel's most skilled martial artists, Danny Rand, aka the Iron Fist. So, with all of that, he is truly someone you would not want to get in a fight with. Seriously, like unless you have a death wish, then by all means, go right ahead and fight him. Number 5, enhanced speed. This power is not one that immediately comes to mind when you think of Luke Cage. But he does technically have it. Because of his strength, he's able to push his body a lot farther than the average human. Now, he's not as fast as people with super speed, but he would still be near the top of the list. Plus, he could run through things and it would not really hurt him. Unless it was some sort of adamantium wall or alien metal or something along those lines, then yeah, it might hurt him a little bit, but he'd bounce back. He is super healing, he's all good, you don't have to worry about Luke Cage. Number 4, super stamina. Stamina can vary from person to person. A lot of people will work for years to build their stamina up. So if they are, if they are a runner, or maybe they're just lifting weights, or maybe they're just some sort of any type of physical activity, they can last a lot longer. Luke Cage has amazing stamina. He was a strong guy even before he got his powers, but when he got them, everything was amplified. So he could literally fight for just a really long time, and he will never get tired. I mean, even if he did eventually get tired, and that would be a while, the guy is a hero. He would keep pushing himself past all of his limits because that is what heroes do to protect the city they live in. And Luke Cage always wants to protect people. Number 3, hot and cold resistance. So since Luke is basically invulnerable, certain environments don't affect him like they would us. This applies to extreme hot and cold environments. While a lot of other people or even heroes would fall under these harsh conditions, Luke Cage is able to carry on and continue whatever he's doing. Like, it could be the coldest day, with snow and it's like super windy, and he could just walk outside, t-shirt, shorts if he wanted to. I mean, he probably wouldn't do that, but he could. And that is something that a lot of people might not know about him. But, some probably already do. Number 2, chemical resistance. Similar to what I was saying about hot and cold, chemicals don't really hurt him. Some at least. I mean, there are some that could probably hurt him, but just average ones that humans are not supposed to interact with would have really no effect on him. Like, he could walk in a room filled with harsh chemicals and absolutely be fine. Whereas a human would probably need to wear a protective suit. It's a very useful power to have, if he's ever in a chemical plant or just clean the house. Number 1, thunderclap. A lot of people attribute this ability to the Hulk, and in all fairness, I think Hulk does use it a little bit more, but Luke Cage has been known to use the thunderclap on specific occasions. Basically, if he claps his hands together really hard, he can create this massive boom that could destroy buildings or just hit people back, and is a very useful thing to have, especially in tight situations if you're surrounded or you just want to move the fight away from a certain area. Alright, there you have it guys, the top 10 superpowers you never knew Luke Cage had. Or maybe you did. Who knows? What does your list look like? Let us know down in those comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to Top 10 Nerds so you never miss one nerdy video like this one. I'm your host David Raff, and thank you so much for watching.
Starting us off in at number 10, telepathy. This is a power I'm sure many of you are aware of, but we wanted to put it on our list in order to clear up some common misconceptions about the Atlantean superhero. You know the one. Aquaman talks to fish. Lols, how funny, what a goofy guy, he talks to fish. Now, despite the New 52's wonderful retaliation to this, it's still a common myth that Arthur Curry can have long conversations with fish. He's not the deep friends. Perhaps the New 52 description is best. When criticized for ordering fish and chips at a diner, Arthur has to explain to common folk that he doesn't talk to fish. Instead, he says he reaches into their midbrains and telepathically pushes them to help him out, with the exception of dolphins who have more sophisticated brains. He also vaguely alludes to his financial situation in the same diner conversation, in case you were wondering about that. This telepathy does not extend past aquatic life though, or rather has the biggest impact on aquatic life, and is largely considered to be aqua telepathy. In at number 9, heat resistance. Thanks to his superhuman Atlantean physiology, Aquaman is capable of withstanding extreme amounts of heat. His skin is heat resistant. High temperatures that would be fatal to humans are not fatal to him. This even extends to powerful energy blasts, having withstood blasts from Black Manta, Amazo, and even Superman himself. That shit's hot. This isn't the only kind of resistance his body has depicted. He can swim in the depths of the ocean without being affected by the pressure, and can do it while swimming at incredibly fast speeds. Dude is durable. Up next at number 8, he can create ice. So this is kinda obvious when you think about it in a weird, skewed way. When in the vicinity of water, Aquaman is capable of freezing large portions of it if he wills so. But this is not something that he can do on his lonesome. It's thanks to his Trident of Poseidon. The Trident allows for him to project and control ice. Now when in water, he can freeze his opponent solid if need be. The full scope of this ability is not entirely clear, although some believe that in theory, he was capable of freezing massive portions of the ocean via this nifty little trick. Nowadays though, this power is not one that he possesses anymore. The Trident temporarily served as an extension of Poseidon's powers, in a similar way to how Wonder Woman has been given godly powers for brief periods of time too. Like that whole Ares power thing? Yeah. Retcons! And at number 7, night vision. Arthur has night vision. This is something that comes with his Atlantean physiology. All Atlanteans have heightened senses, and thanks to living underwater and being in the depths of the ocean, being able to see in utter darkness is kind of a must. Aside from traversing areas of the ocean where the sun don't shine, Aquaman has used this trick to aid in battling sea creatures who inhabit the bottom of the ocean floor. And this even comes in handy occasionally when he's fighting foes on land. Can't lurk in the shadows with this guy. He'll spot you. And at number 6, sonar. This one kinda goes hand in hand with his aqua telepathy. Aquaman has a sonar sense, echolocation, that allows him to use high-pitched frequencies in order to locate objects and living beings within his vicinity. He can also pick up on the frequencies of other life forms. This allows him to create a mental map of the ocean, and lets him remain aware of what or who is in his underwater territory or nearby vicinity. It's an incredibly useful tool in his arsenal. Many believe this trait is thanks to the fact that sea life, the likes of dolphins, use echolocation. It makes sense that Aquaman, the dweller of the depths, would have a similar ability. Creative inspiration. In at 5, superhuman jumping. We once did a list on this channel that was top 10 superheroes who could jump. I can't remember if Aquaman made the cut, but thinking about it now, he probably should have. This is a fun list. When it comes to Aquaman, superhuman jumping is probably not a talent of his that immediately comes to mind. Not to be mistaken with flying, an ability of his that occasionally pops up and is occasionally retconned, Arthur is capable of leaping massive heights into the air, jumping 4 or 5 stories high with complete ease. He can cross whole cities with just a handful of leaps. It's definitely not a power that we see a lot of, although many fans feel that it is a nice power that gives him the ability to cross distances quickly without having to fly. Regardless, it is pretty impressive. Moving on to number 4, teleportation. Aquaman's trident can do a lot, or at least a lot more than turn things into ice and stab foes. It's got 3 pointy ends. The Trident of Poseidon also allows Arthur to teleport. In the 2015 New 52 Aquaman series in issue 40, the Trident's abilities were expanded upon, with teleportation being added to its roster by issue 42. This ability grants him the power to teleport himself globally and interplanetary distances using water as a medium. In at number 3, the Clear. This is a power of Aquaman's that has been retconned over the years, but it's still fascinating and worth mentioning nonetheless. The Clear is not dissimilar to the Green, the force that connects all plant life that characters like Swamp Thing or Poison Ivy are connected to. Or actually kinda like the Force in Star Wars too. Sort of. The Clear, though, is a link between all ocean life in the entire universe, and you bet your butt that Arthur Curry has a deep link to it. It expands his ability to communicate telepathically with aquatic life on a massive scale, connecting to thousands of marine life forms all at once. Impressive, isn't it? But a little OP, which makes sense as to why it's been phased out of his character's history. Moving on to number 2, Water Wraith. In the JLA, the Obsidian Age story arc, Aquaman had a bit of a strange period where he was transformed into a water wraith by Zatanna in order to save Atlantis. She challenged his consciousness into the ocean. Basically, he became a living body of water. This form gave him the ability to control all of the oceans on the planet, and gave him such a powerful level of hydrokinesis that he was practically a god. Move over, Poseidon. Since that storyline, we haven't seen Aquaman in this form though. It's probably for the best. He was a bit of a dick at the time. Besides, the storyline was kind of convoluted anyway, so. And finally, in our number 1 spot, limited weather manipulation. This is a power of Aquaman's that has varied over the years. Remember that time that Aquaman lost his hand? In the aftermath of that, he was granted a magical water hand, called the Water Bearer Hand, and it was from a mysterious character called Lady of the Lake. Fun. This allowed him to use something called hydrokinesis, which we've kind of talked about a bit before. It's Arthur's ability to manipulate water, and it's actually something that his wife Mira is more known for in comparison. Now, Arthur could create and manipulate tidal waves at will when he had this power. It was eventually retconned, but later replaced with something slightly different. In the New 52, his trident can summon tsunamis, call down thunder and lightning, and as we mentioned earlier, can project and control ice. It can also move land masses, so lots of environmental stuff going on here, friends. Alright, there we have it. What powers of Aquaman's have shocked or confused you over the years? Were you a fan of his water bearer hand era? Starting us off in at number 10, Atom Kinesis. Storm has the power to control matter on an atomic level. This is the basis of her weather manipulation abilities. She has a psionic ability to control all forms of weather and ecosystems, modifying and controlling aspects like temperature, precipitation, humidity, and moisture, and can generate lightning and other electromagnetic atmospheric phenomena, including atmospheric pressure. And that control is incredibly precise to boot. So yeah, girl can do some awesome stuff. Up next, number 9, Telepathic Resistance. Sometimes simply referred to as her immense willpower, Storm has the ability to resist telepathic attacks. Now, this is actually one of her more interesting abilities due to the fact that it wasn't part of her genetic mutant skill set. It was something that she learned and honed over the years thanks to being in such close proximity with telepathic mutants who were also part of the X-Men team. Her resistance to telepathic attacks also becomes enhanced thanks to the electromagnetic forces she manipulates, which can help cloud up her foe's focus. Moving on to number 8, her Earthlink. Storm has developed a very special psychic bond with the primal force of Earth's biosphere. Now, this elevates her powers to a spiritual level, feeding her spiritual and material sustenance and creating a vast amount of empathy for living beings. This is why her emotions can overload her sometimes. Not only do her emotions dictate the strength of her control over the weather, but it can also lead to catastrophic effects if she can't maintain control over her feelings. Anywho, this Earthlink can also sense and detect life force. She can sense things like dying life forms. She once sensed that a tree was dying on the property of the Xavier Mansion. She once sensed that the blackbird was cutting through the atmosphere even though she was thousands of miles away. And she can sense any natural phenomena occurring on the planet, like earthquakes. I mean, if she stopped being a crime fighter, she would have a great career as a meteorologist. Just saying. In at number 7, Magical Potential. While we haven't really seen much of Storm busting out magical powers, based on her ancestry, there is evidence that she could potentially unlock magical abilities. And we've seen this become a reality in alternate universes, including when the 616 Ileana Rasputina, aka Magic, found herself in the Limbo Dimension where she ran into an alternate of Storms, who would then go on to train her in the arts of witchcraft and black magic. Back to the 616 Storm though. One of her ancestors was a sorceress supreme, and other ancestors of hers worshipped Egyptian gods, specifically Ashtur, the mother of Agamotto, who seems to favor those of Aurora's bloodline. Imagine having a god back you, just knowing that like, they got you if you ever run into trouble. That'd be kinda nice. Moving on to number 6, she can breathe underwater. Storm's ability to control and manipulate natural forces extends to the power of separating matter molecules into oxygen and hydrogen via electrolysis. Now this means she can breathe underwater, as seen in Extreme X-Men issue 2. I mean, it makes sense considering she can control so much precipitation in the first place. It'd be nice to, you know, create like a tsunami but also be able to withstand it and breathe through it and not feel like you're drowning. Let's sidetrack a bit here from Storm's mutant powers and look at one of her abilities that comes from years of practice and experience. Being able to pick locks, pick pockets, and get past advanced security systems, and use her immense dexterity when in a pickle or needing to escape from somewhere. Now this dexterity isn't just in her hands either. She's proficient with her toes and mouth too. Get your mind out of the gutter, friends. Now these skills are ones that she keeps honed and even passed down to students of hers. Go to Xavier's School of Gifted Youngsters, learn how to pick a lock, and steal some money. Moving on to number 4, energy vision. This one largely ties into Storm's atom kinesis powers. Storm is able to alter her visual perception of the world around her. Now this allows her to see energy patterns with much more clarity, and she can detect the flow of electromagnetic, kinetic, and thermal energy, which she can then bend to her will, allowing her to create the likes of thunderstorms, hurricanes, blizzards, you name it. But it's not just the natural world that she can perceive differently. She can also use this ability on humans, and see the nervous systems of others, which comes in handy when needing to counterattack. All this is possible with just a blink of her eyes, and she can even use it to see in almost complete darkness. Up next at 3, she can use her powers in space. When we think of Storm's vast connection to nature, we often tie those powers to the environment on Earth. But Storm can also use her powers in outer space, and has done so in the past. Whatever planet she's on, her deep connection to nature allows her to make use of that planet's natural energy. And similar to our previous number concerning her ability to breathe underwater, because she can affect and manipulate molecules, along with interstellar and intergalactic mediums, she can theoretically breathe in outer space depending on the conditions and the nearby environment. So not a foolproof thing, but definitely something that she might be able to amount to. In at number 2, teleportation. Now we are getting into some of the more obscure abilities of Storm's. Storm is capable of teleporting. Sort of. In Extraordinary X-Men Volume 1, Issue 16, Storm used energy from witches and wizards to create a portal out of lightning, and then she used said portal to teleport herself and others to various realms. It is believed that she was able to do this thanks to having that magical ancestry that we mentioned earlier. This was part of the Kingdom's Fall story arc in which Sapna, a relatively new X-Men member, was possessed by the World Eater, and Storm and Magic had to work together to prevent it from claiming the realm of Limbo. And finally, in at number 1, she's a god. Divinity. In Storm's first introduction, she was being worshipped as a goddess in the Serengeti after her mutant powers had appeared, which is where she was recruited by Professor Xavier in Giant Size X-Men issue 1 in 1975. Technically, it was specifically Kenya. The gift of godhood has been passed down from Aurora's ancestors, and the mutant can be endowed with more power from people's beliefs and prayers. The more people who believe in her, the more powerful she becomes. She's like a weather Santa, but without gifts and a much nicer physique. Sorry, Santa. In Black Panther issue 172, she became an actual god when the faith of Wakandans helped her ascend and gave her enough power to defeat the villain adversary. She's also been known to invoke the god Oshtur for aid from time to time. Looks like that connection does come in handy.
Number 10. He's a Dhampir. Okay, you might know this one, but still, we have to address it. So, if you've never heard of this term, a Dhampir is a creature that is the result of a union between a vampire and a human. Traditionally male vampires and female humans, although the reverse did occasionally happen. Seemingly, Dhampirs were unaffected by their vampire origins and were normal citizens for all intents and purposes. However, according to folklore, they were able to see invisible vampires and practice sorcery and would often be vampire hunters. In the case of Blade, his mother was attacked by her doctor, Deacon Frost, who was actually a vampire and feasted on her while she gave birth. This passed on a series of enzymes that altered Blade, transforming him, which actually leads us to our next power. Number 9. Immunity to vampire bites and other vulnerabilities. So because of the enzymes that altered Blade, he now has immunity to vampire bites. This more or less makes him the ideal candidate for being a vampire hunter, considering the biggest risk is turning into a vampire yourself. Blade has a natural affinity for disabling one of a vampire's greatest assets. Blade is also immune to the effects of religious icons like crucifixes, which tend to leave most vampires powerless. Speaking of Blade's resistances, number 8. Superhuman durability. Because of Blade's Dhampir tissue, he's able to survive severe physical trauma up to a certain point. He's been shown to survive energy blasts, extreme temperatures, and impacts without injury. This partially relates to his healing factor, which is actually another power he's got. Number 7. Slowed aging. So, like vampires, Blade also has a much longer lifespan due to his slowed aging. During the time he's lived on Earth, no change in his appearance has ever been noted, which is good because I too fear the curse of a receding hairline. Lucky Blade. Wish my mom got eaten by a vampire. Number 6, healing factor. So Blade, like actual vampires, has an accelerated healing factor that surpasses that of an ordinary human. He's able to heal from slashes, punctures, and impacts in a short period of time. Although, if he were to lose a limb or any organs, they would not be recovered, so he's at least gotta keep the arms on. Number 5, superpowers coming from Morbius. So, despite not really having powers like super strength, Blade eventually received these powers after being bitten by Morbius, the living vampire. Because Morbius was not a natural vampire but a scientifically created vampire, he reacted strangely to it. He gained many vampire strengths and lost multiple vampire weaknesses, including the weakness to sunlight. Speaking of vampire weaknesses, number 4, resistance to silver. As most know, in vampire lore, they are highly allergic to silver. So silver blades and bullets are capable of killing vampires. Blade, on the other hand, can be injured by silver similarly to a human, and it will just heal as normal. It's starting to seem as though you could just go to the vampire power list and just scratch off the weaknesses section and you'd have Blade. Number 3, acute senses. Blade's senses are greatly enhanced from that of normal humans, comparable to the senses that vampires have. He's able to see great distances and is able to see with perfect clarity in near total darkness. Likewise, his hearing is enhanced and he's able to hear sounds humans are unable to hear and at greater distances. He's also able to sense supernatural beings that a human would be unable to. So this guy has strength, speed, the ability to detect the supernatural, and all the resistances of vampires. This is getting a bit OP. Number 2, he can turn into a bat. Yeah, this one doesn't come up much, but in Uncanny Avengers Annual number 1, when battling Rogue, Blade turns into a giant bat. Not a power that comes up often for Blade, especially not enough for most biographies to even list it, but evidently, he can do it. So evidently the vampire powers run deeper than we thought. Not much to say about this since he's done it, as far as I can see, only once, but please, if you can name more, please tell me. Number 1, his saliva can turn humans into vampires. In the 2006 TV series adaptation of Blade, it was shown that Blade's saliva can turn a human into a vampire, as it still possesses the enzyme that changes them. The series was short-lived, and despite it being the most watched original premiere in Spike TV history, the series was cancelled after one season of only 12 episodes. So, sadly, we'll never know what repercussions that could potentially have. I guess no sloppy kisses from Blade?